She looked me dead in the eye, smirked like she was daring me to breathe wrong, and said, "If you don't like my choices, Mark, then get a divorce." Everyone always thought I was the quiet one in our marriage, the man who let things slide. She thought that too. She had no idea that the last choice she gave me would become the last one she'd ever regret. Before I go on, hit subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment. Your support keeps these stories alive. That IT started on a Thursday evening so ordinary it almost felt staged. Dinner dishes were still on the counter, the dishwasher humming softly, the living room lit by a single warm lamp. I was scrolling through emails on the couch, half tuned out after a long day, when Jenna walked in. She had that posture, the one that said a decision had already been made without my involvement. Arms crossed, hip tilted, chin high, a look I'd grown far too familiar with over the past year. "I'm going on a trip next week," she said, like she was announcing the weather. "Leaving Friday morning, back the following Friday." No pause, no warmth, no consideration. I looked up slowly. "A trip? Where?" She shrugged. "Oceanfront resort. A few people from work are going." The way she said "a few people" told me everything. She meant one person in particular. For the past 6 months, one name had been quietly carving its way into our daily life: Evan. If Jenna wasn't quoting him, she was laughing at something he said, or suddenly having late meetings that just happened to include him. I sat up. "Is Evan going?" "Yeah," she said without hesitation. "He helped organize it." She didn't flinch, not even a flicker of guilt, just stared at me like she was daring me to question her. A full week, with him, at a beach resort, and she was informing me, not inviting, not discussing, informing. "So you planned this weeks ago," I said carefully. "But you're telling me now?" She rolled her eyes. Rolled them. "Mark, it's a work trip. Adults can take trips without turning it into drama." She said adults the way some people say children, sharp, dismissive. A verbal slap. I felt something inside me shift, but I kept my voice level. "Did you think to ask how I felt about it?" That's when her expression dropped the pretense. The fake patience evaporated. What replaced it was colder than anything she'd ever said. "I'm not asking for permission," she snapped. "I'm going. If you don't like my choices, get a divorce." The words hit the room like a brick through glass. No shouting, no tremble in her voice, just pure defiance. Pure certainty that I would fold, same as always. That I would swallow my discomfort, pretend it didn't bother me, pretend everything was fine. I looked at her, really looked, at the distant glare in her eyes, the dismissive tilt of her chin, the way she stood like she was already halfway out of our life. And something inside me went quiet, not defeated, not afraid, quiet in a way that felt like the beginning of something. "Got it," I said. "Nothing more." She blinked. Confusion flickered, just for a moment. "That's it?" she asked. "No big scene?" "Nope," I said. "You made yourself clear." She stood there waiting for the argument that never came. When it didn't, she shrugged, turned, and said she was packing tonight. I watched her disappear down the hallway, humming to herself, pulling suitcases out of the closet like she was heading to paradise instead of walking out on her marriage. But I didn't follow her, didn't ask questions, didn't plead or negotiate. I just sat there in the warm lamplight, the dishwasher humming behind me, and let the silence settle around her words. "If you don't like my choices, get a divorce." She thought she'd thrown down an ultimatum. She didn't realize she'd handed me a key. The next morning, she left early in a new sundress I'd never seen before, probably bought for him. "I'll text you when I land," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "Have fun," I replied, keeping my face unreadable. She searched my expression, suspicious, but said nothing. Then she left. No kiss, no goodbye, no second glance. I watched her load her suitcase, fix her hair in the car mirror, smile at her reflection, and drive away without hesitation. And the moment she turned the corner, I picked up my phone, not to scroll, not to wait, but to make the first choice she never expected me to make. Because she thought she knew me, thought I'd always stay, thought my quiet meant weakness. She was wrong, and the next move was mine. The next chapter of this whole situation began with me standing alone in my kitchen, staring at the manila envelope on the table like it was a live grenade. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every little sound stand out. The ticking clock over the stove, the hum of the fridge, the faint whoosh of cars passing outside. Brooke's suitcase-shaped dent was still in the carpet by the front door, a reminder of how casually she'd rolled out of here a few days earlier, sundress swaying, announcing that if I didn't like her choices, I could get a divorce. So I did. Her boxes were stacked neatly in the guest room now, labeled in my handwriting, clothes, bathroom, miscellaneous. 7 years of marriage reduced to cardboard and Sharpie. I wasn't proud of the symbolism, but I wasn't ashamed either. It just felt honest. Her flight had landed an hour ago. She texted me earlier in the week with the arrival time, probably expecting I'd offer to pick her up, carry her bags, ask about the resort, pretend the whole thing was normal. I hadn't replied. Instead, I'd made coffee, straightened the envelope on the table 3 times, and tried to keep my breathing steady. Around 3:15, tires crunched on the driveway. My chest tightened, but my hands stayed steady as I set my mug down. The key turned in the lock with that familiar metallic click, and then she was there, Brooke, bronzed, glowing, rolling her suitcase behind her like a trophy. Her hair was a little lighter from the sun, her white sundress hugging every curve. She'd suddenly started dressing up for work months ago. She didn't even look at me at first. She just nudged the suitcase inside with her foot and stretched like she'd had the most relaxing week of her life. "I am starving," she announced, heading straight for the fridge like she owned the place, like nothing between us had shifted an inch. Airline food is a crime. I watched her pull out leftovers, fork clinking against the container as she dug in cold, leaning against my counter like she'd never left. Finally, she glanced up, frowning a little. "You're quiet. Welcome home," I said. The words tasted strange, too polite for the rubble we were standing in. "How was the trip?" She smiled, that easy, radiant smile that had once been for me and only me. "Amazing. The resort was beautiful. Perfect weather, non-stop fun. We had such a good time. There it was again, the plural she'd been living in for months without inviting me along. Logan's name didn't have to be said. He was there in every syllable. "Glad you enjoyed yourself," I replied, keeping my voice level. She took another bite, watching me more closely now, like she could sense something was off but couldn't quite see the edges yet. "So," she said casually, "did you think about what I said before I left?" I tilted my head. "Which part?" "About the divorce." She said it like she was asking if I'd thought about repainting the living room. "I meant it. If you can't handle me having my own life, then maybe we need to reevaluate things." I let a beat of silence stretch between us. Then I nodded. "You're right. We should reevaluate things." She laughed, a short, uncertain sound. "Okay, Jason, don't be dramatic. What does that even mean?" I nodded toward the table behind her. "Why don't you go see?" She frowned, turned, and noticed the envelope for the first time. It sat in the middle of the table, perfectly aligned, quiet and deadly. "What's that?" "Open it," I said. Something in my tone made her hesitate. She set her fork down, wiped her fingers on a napkin, and walked over. When she picked up the envelope, her fingers trembled just a little. She slid the papers out, eyes scanning the first page. I watched it happen, the tan fading from her face, her mouth parting, the easy confidence draining away like someone had pulled a plug. "Jason," she breathed, voice scraping the air. "What is this?" "Divorce papers," I answered calmly. "Like you suggested." Her eyes shot up to mine, wide, shiny, disbelieving. "You're joking." "I'm not." "No," she snapped, shaking the pages like they were going to rearrange themselves into something less threatening. "No, this is insane. You can't just file for divorce while I'm on a trip." "I did," I said, "while you were at your beach resort with your colleague. You told me if I didn't like your choices, I should get a divorce. I took you at your word." She stared at me, like she was trying to reframe me into the version she'd gotten used to. The quiet husband, the flexible one, the man who swallowed his pride so the marriage could limp forward. I watched her realize that man was gone. "People say things when they're upset," she finally managed. "You know that. I didn't mean it." "You weren't upset," I replied. "You were calm, smirking, completely sure I wouldn't do anything. You meant it." She bit down on her lip, the bravado slipping. "This is ridiculous. You're throwing away our marriage over one trip." I almost laughed. "Brooke, this isn't about one trip. It's about 6 months of late nights, secret texts, and you acting like sharing a roof with me was some obligation you barely remembered to fulfill. The trip was just the first time you said out loud what you'd already been doing." She slammed the papers on the table so hard the fork rattled. "Nothing happened with Logan," she hissed. "We're friends. We work together. Adults can go on trips. You twisted this into something ugly because you're insecure." I didn't take the bait. I just looked at her, steady, quiet. The silence must have said more than any speech could, because her eyes darted away. "You can't be serious," she muttered. "These are already filed?" "Filed on Tuesday," I said. "The attorney is waiting for your signature." "You did this after 4 days? You didn't even try to talk to me?" My voice stayed low even. "Brooke, I've been trying to talk to you for half a year. You checked out. You told me where your priorities were. I just finally believed you." She rubbed her temples like she could massage a different version of reality into place. "Where are my things?" she asked suddenly, looking around. "The bathroom, the closet. Where's everything?" "Guest room," I said. "I boxed it all up." Her head snapped toward the hallway. "You packed my things?" "All of them. Easier this way." She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Wow, so thoughtful. You plan to drag my boxes to the curb next." "I plan," I said, "to give you until tomorrow morning to figure out where you're going. After that, this house goes back to being mine." "This is my house too," she barked. "We're married." "The deed says otherwise," I replied. "I bought it before we ever said, 'I do.' You never paid into the mortgage." I checked the legal part with my attorney before I touched a single sweater. Her eyes burned into me, furious and desperate all at once. "You're really going to kick your wife out like she's some stranger?" "My wife," I answered quietly, "left for a week with another man and told me to get a divorce if I had a problem. I'm just following instructions." Her jaw tightened. She snatched her phone from her purse with shaking hands. "I'm calling my mother. You can explain to her why you've lost your mind." "Happy to," I said. She turned away, pacing the kitchen as she dialed. "Mom, can you come over? Please, it's bad. I need you." Her voice cracked on that last part, and for a moment I almost felt something, habit maybe, or the echo of what used to be empathy, passed. I walked into the living room, sat on the couch and waited. 10 minutes later, A familiar car pulled into the driveway, and then the front door flew open without so much as a knock. Linda marched in first, sharp features set to maximum judgment. Brooke close behind, blotchy-faced and rattled. "What did you do to my daughter?" Linda demanded, not even saying hello. I stood up slowly. "Hi, Linda. Good to see you too. I filed for divorce. Brooke has the paperwork." "He's kicking me out?" Brooke choked out, clutching her mother's arm. "He packed all my things while I was gone." Linda turned on me like a prosecutor. "You can't just throw her out of her own home." "Legally, I can," I said. "And I will. The house is in my name alone. I confirmed everything with my attorney before I made a move." "This is absurd," Linda snapped. "You're married. That means something." "It used to," I said. "But apparently, taking week-long vacations with a friend means more now." Brooke's eyes flared. "I didn't cheat on you. I didn't answer that. I didn't have to." The air between us buzzed with everything we both knew, and neither of us was willing to say out loud in front of her mother. Linda squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "Get your essentials," she said. "You're coming home with me tonight. We'll talk to a real lawyer and sort this nonsense out." Brooke hesitated, looking from her mother to me, eyes trembling, like she was still hoping I'd back down, apologize, admit this was an overreaction, and hand her the power back. I stayed silent. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "Fine," she muttered. "But you're going to regret this, Jason." She disappeared down the hall toward the guest room. I heard the creak of the door, then the sudden halt in her footsteps when she saw the neat rows of boxes with her name on them. Linda shot me a look of pure contempt, but said nothing, following her daughter to help. For the next 20 minutes, I listened to muffled voices, the thud of boxes, the slam of dresser drawers. They passed through the living room twice, arms full, Brooke refusing to meet my eyes, Linda glaring like she wanted to carve a hole through me. On their last trip, Brooke stopped. Her hair was a mess now. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. The sundress that had looked so carefree when she walked in now hanging off her like someone else's life. 7 years, she said quietly, voice raw. "And this is what I get." "No," I replied. 7 years is what I gave. What you get now is what you chose." She stared at me for a long second, then turned and walked out. The door shook the walls when she slammed it behind her. I watched from the window as they loaded the final box into Linda's car, as Brooke wiped her face with the back of her hand, as they drove away without looking back. The house settled into a deep, unfamiliar silence. It felt strange, empty, and peaceful all at once. I stood there for a long moment, then took out my phone and dialed the locksmith. When the man on the other end said he could be there in an hour, I said, "Perfect," and hung up. Later, when the new keys were in my hand and the old locks lay twisted in his toolbox, the house felt different, cleaner. Mine. I reheated some leftovers, sat at the table where that envelope had started everything, and let the quiet stretch around me. A little after 8, my phone lit up on the table, screen flashing her name over and over, vibrating against the wood. I let it ring, watching the glow blink on and off in the dim kitchen, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't have to answer it. 3 days passed before I heard from her again, and even then, it wasn't through a call. I was standing in the aisle at the grocery store, staring at a row of coffee brands I'd never noticed before, when my attention snagged on a familiar voice. At first, I thought I imagined it, but when I turned, there she was, Catherine, one of Brooke's co-workers. She froze when our eyes met, her expression stiffening like she'd been caught somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. She tried to turn her cart around, but I called her name. Slowly, reluctantly, she approached. "Hey," she said, voice shaky. "Long week." Something like that. I replied. Quick question. Were you on that beach trip with Brooke and Logan? She looked down at her cart, adjusting something that didn't need adjusting. I wasn't. I was invited, but I had family stuff. So it wasn't a group thing, I said. Not a question. She swallowed. They said a few people were going, but everyone kept backing out. The last I heard, it was just the two of them. I let that sit between us. Not for drama, just to acknowledge the truth that had been obvious for months. She exhaled. I told her it was a bad idea, she said quietly. But Brooke hasn't been listening to anyone lately. I nodded. Thanks, Catherine. She hesitated, then added, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. After she walked away, her words echoed longer than I expected. Not because I needed validation, but because it felt like a door gently closing instead of slamming. That night, when I got home, an email waited in my inbox. The subject line read, "Please read." It was from Brooke. Not her usual tone, no fire, no defiance. Just long, wandering paragraphs about how she'd made mistakes, how she realized what she'd risked, how she wanted to talk things through. She described old memories, early days, the life we built. But even in her apology, she avoided naming the very thing that had broken us. No mention of Logan, no accountability, just a request for another chance. I read the email twice. Then I forwarded it to my attorney with a simple note. This doesn't change anything. His response came back fast. Good. She's panicking. Stay firm. And I did. Weeks passed. Papers moved through the system. Her attorney tried to contest the house, then backed down when mine provided every document dating back to before our wedding. She tried emotional appeals. My attorney ignored them. She tried anger. I didn't respond. Eventually, when her legal fees started outweighing her chances, she signed. The day I got the official confirmation, I sat in my car outside the courthouse, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the sunlight hit the windshield. It felt strangely peaceful. Not triumphant, not bitter. Just like something heavy had finally loosened. I called my friend Daniel. You free tonight? Always, he said. What's up? It's done. The divorce. Yeah. He let out a low whistle. Man, you good. Better than I've been in a long time. Dinner. I'll meet you at that steakhouse on Pine. When I walked inside that evening, I felt lighter. Not healed, healing is an instant, but lighter, like I was walking without a weight that had been strapped to me for months. Over steak and drinks, we talked about everything except the divorce, which was exactly what I needed. Life went on. Work settled. The house felt like mine again. Quiet, steady, simple. A month later, I saw Brooke in a parking lot across from a hardware store. She was thinner, shoulders slumped, eyes tired. When she recognized me, she froze, then looked away quickly and hurried to her car. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt nothing at all. That's when I knew the story was truly finished. 3 months later, I went on a date, coffee with someone I met through work. No expectations, no pressure, just two people talking. When she laughed at something I said, something inside me unlocked, quietly, gently. Driving home that night, I realized I was actually happy. Not forced happy, not pretending happy, just happy. And it hit me. Brooke had told me, if you don't like my choices, get a divorce. She thought it was an insult, a dare, a threat. Turns out it was the best advice she ever gave me. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.